On a freezing winter morning in December 1944, deep in the shattered remnants of a Belgian village named La Gauloise during the desperate throes of the Battle of the Bulge, Private Daniel Harris, a lanky 20-year-old American soldier hailing from the rolling farmlands of rural Pennsylvania, found himself thrust into the jaws of hell itself. The Ardennes forest loomed like a spectral guardian around the village, its snow-laden pines whispering secrets of ancient battles. But today they stood silent witness to the fury of modern war. Daniel had been part of a weary platoon from the 101st Airborne Division, holding the line against Hitler's last-ditch offensive, their breaths forming ghostly plumes in the sub-zero air that bit through wool uniforms like knives forged in ice. The ambush erupted without warning, as if the very earth had conspired against them. 3 MG-42 machine guns, those infamous Hitler's buzzsaws, roared to life in perfect, deadly synchronization, their rapid-fire bursts shredding the wooden beams of dilapidated farmhouses and sending cascades of splinters flying like shrapnel from a demonic forge. Hot tracer rounds whipped past Daniel's face, illuminating the dawn in fiery streaks that seared his retina, forcing him to dive headlong into a shallow roadside ditch filled with icy sludge, jagged debris from bombed-out vehicles, and the frozen remnants of yesterday's snowfall. The water soaked through his boots and trousers instantly, numbing his legs to the bone, while the screams of his wounded comrades pierced the chaos like banshee wails echoing through the ruined streets that had once bustled with villagers but now lay as a labyrinth of craters, rubble, and the twisted skeletons of burned-out tanks. His M1 Garand rifle, that trusty 8-round companion he'd carried from Normandy beaches to this frozen inferno, jammed after the first frantic shots, the bolt seizing up in the unrelenting cold as if cursed by some winter spirit. Cursing under his breath, Daniel ejected the spent clip, his fingers fumbling in the frost, leaving him with only a single fresh clip of 8 rounds, a solitary M1 grenade tucked in his webbing, and a desperate, unyielding will to survive that burned hotter than any artillery shell. Around him, the world dissolved into pandemonium. Mortar rounds thundered down like the hammer strikes of Thor, collapsing entire buildings in avalanches of stone and timber. Flames licked at the edges of the village, twisting the air into a haze of acrid smoke that stung his eyes and choked his lungs. And the guttural shouts of advancing German soldiers, elite SS Panzer Grenadiers, their voices laced with triumphant menace, swept through the ruins like a wolf pack closing in for the kill. Crawling through the mud on his belly, Daniel dodged bullets that struck so close they kicked up fountains of frozen earth, showering him with shards of brick and splintered wood that tore at his uniform and sliced shallow gashes across his cheeks and arms, drawing beads of blood that froze almost instantly on his skin. His mind raced in a whirlwind between primal terror and fleeting memories of home, the warm, cinnamon-scented kitchen where his mother baked apple pies on Sunday afternoons, the infectious laughter of his little sister Emily as she chased fireflies in the summer twilight, and the stack of tear-stained letters from his family tucked safely in his breast pocket, now sodden with ditch water and mud, their ink blurring like fading dreams. Not today, he whispered to himself, his voice lost in the din, as a panzer tank rumbled into view at the village square, its massive turret swiveling like the eye of a mechanical beast, belching fire from its 75mm gun that obliterated a nearby church steeple in a shower of stone confetti. Unbeknownst to the enemy, Daniel had become a ghost in the machine of war, his rural upbringing hunting deer in the Pennsylvania woods, navigating misty mornings with nothing but instinct turning him into an improbable survivor. He huddled behind the wreckage of an overturned horse cart, its wooden frame splintered and smoldering, his heart hammering against his ribs like a war drum, lungs burning from the cold and exertion, hands so numb he could barely grip his rifle. Every instinct screamed to bolt, to run for the trail line. But each twitch of muscle risked instant death. The Germans advanced systematically, their boots crunching on frost-crusted gravel, bayonets fixed and eyes scanning for stragglers. In a moment of divine inspiration, or perhaps the hand of fate itself, Daniel improvised with fragments of charred wood and a discarded helmet as makeshift cover, timing his shallow breaths to the rhythmic pauses between the machine gun bursts, each one a symphony of destruction that seemed orchestrated by the gods of battle. Seizing a split-second lull, he yanked the pin from his grenade with his teeth, the metallic taste mingling with blood from a split lip, and flung it with a praying motion that arced through the air like a comet trailing sparks. The explosion rocked the village street, a fantastic eruption of dirt, flame, and shrapnel that engulfed a cluster of enemy soldiers in a chaotic whirlwind, their shouts turning to agonized howls as limbs and gear were hurled skyward. In the ensuing bedlam, smoke billowing like a dragon's breath, disoriented Germans firing blindly, Daniel slithered away, slipping behind a half-collapsed stone wall that groaned under its own weight, bleeding profusely from his grazes, freezing to his core, and utterly exhausted, his ears ringing with the thunderous aftermath of artillery and small arms fire that blended into a deafening orchestra. Yet somehow, against all odds, he survived as the enemy tide surged past, leaving him in a surreal pocket of quiet broken only by distant cries, the pervasive stench of cordite and burning flesh, and the gnawing realization that he had cheated death by mere seconds. Cunning strategy, and a stroke of luck that felt almost supernatural, but the ordeal was far from over. Hours stretched into an eternity as Daniel navigated the wreckage-strewn village, a fantastical maze of toppled spires, gutted homes, and frozen corpses locked in eternal poses of defiance or despair. He hid under the sagging roofs of abandoned barns, their timbers creaking like the moans of restless spirits, crawling past the lifeless bodies of friends and foes alike, their eyes staring blankly at the leaden sky. Search parties of German scouts prowled the shadows, their flashlights piercing the gloom like predatory eyes, forcing him to burrow into snowdrifts or camouflage himself amid piles of rubble. His breath held until his chest ached. To sustain himself, he scavenged scraps of hardtack from a fallen comrade's pack, melting handfuls of snow in his mouth for water that tasted of ash and iron, all while frostbite began its insidious creep, turning the tips of his fingers and toes into throbbing, blackened warnings of impending loss as the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a blood-red glow across the ruins that painted the snow in hues of crimson and gold like the palette of some mad artist depicting Armageddon. Daniel's luck turned once more. Stumbling through a fog-shrouded alley, his vision blurring from fatigue and cold, he encountered a spectral vision, a group of American reinforcements from the 82nd Airborne, who had stormed the village in a counterattack of legendary ferocity, their Sherman tanks rumbling like avenging titans and their rifles barking defiance. Collapsing into their arms, shivering violently as medics wrapped him in blankets and poured hot coffee down his throat, Daniel felt the world spin back into focus. Frostbite had claimed parts of his extremities, but he was alive, a lone witness to the nightmarish ballet of bullets, fear, and fire that had unfolded like an epic saga from the annals of myth. In the days that followed, as he recovered in a field hospital amid the clamor of wounded heroes, Daniel Harris reflected on his survival. It wasn't luck alone that had carried him through. It was the split-second decisions born of ingenuity, the raw endurance forged in the crucible of Pennsylvania's harsh winters, and the sheer stubbornness of a young man unwilling to surrender to the relentless horror of war. He had outwitted machine guns that spat death at 1,200 rounds per minute, evaded tanks that crushed all in their path, and traversed a battlefield where angels and demons seemed to clash in the ether, emerging from the ruins not just as a survivor, but as a living legend whispered among his comrades. Daniel became a testament to the merciless reality of World War II, that sometimes survival transcended mere heroics, becoming a fantastic odyssey of enduring long enough to see the sun rise again, its golden rays promising that even in the darkest winter, hope could blaze eternal. Years later, back on his family's farm, he would recount the tale to wide-eyed grandchildren, embellishing it with the grandeur it deserved, ensuring that the fantastic spirit of that frozen morning lived on forever.